It is great to see this man back. You know, we were lucky enough to get a season's worth of UTEP women's basketball with Tim Hagerty, the radio voice of the UTEP women this year. And now he's getting ready for his day job, the voice of the El Paso Chihuahuas, which will be starting up in about 6 weeks, 6 weeks now. We're getting closer and closer. And Hags joins us from the greatest Zoom setup ever. He's got photos. He's got a background. It is phenomenal. I've never seen a virtual Zoom background quite as impressive as the one you are displaying today. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, Eileen with the Chihuahuas designed that, sent it to me. I think you and me included, I think we've all learned more than we had to about virtual connections and virtual backgrounds over the past 13 months.
Is that the background you use for your Chihuahuas chatter on your own website?
Yes, we began using this and some others halfway through. I think like all of us, we were evolving as we go, picking the certain nooks in our house that look best for the background and times that we don't have the virtual background. And similarly, I'm happy to see that you are in the Lube and Go studio and not in a corner of your house, which I know you were broadcasting from a couple of months there.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but I took the Lube and Go studio sign home with me. And what I did was I just would set it up in the room right behind me. So the beauty of the Lube and Go studio is it's fully portable. And it went home, and then I packed it back up, brought it back to the station when I started working here regularly last week. It's my second week now with Adrian being back. As great as being home was, because you were there the day I broadcast from the backyard. That was the first ever home broadcast before we ever did anything with the home studio. You were there that day, came with the family to check it out. It was fun having you, but this is what I've been doing for 25 years now, and broadcasting in the studio with a board and a phone line and Adrian across the glass like we're used to. So yes, it definitely, it was great to be home. It's good to be back now at our Lube and Go studios here at the radio station.
Yeah, I remember that first show in your backyard and everybody's snapping photos. They're tweeting photos with a smile because we all thought, COVID was going to be over in 1 month. We all thought this was so temporary. Can you believe it? I did a show for 1 week from my backyard. As it turns out, it was a year that you were in your house. And I'm sure that would be a great feeling. I currently, most days, still work from home, but we're starting to have more activity in the ballpark because the season's coming so close.
Is it nice to know you're not being subject now on a weekly basis to COVID testing at UTEP the way you had to deal with this season for women's basketball?
Yeah. I want to be appreciative because their COVID protocols were strict, and that's what you want. Yes, but fortunately, the way that our community is now offered more vaccines, I have gotten 1 out of my 2 shots. Hope to and plan to have the second shot before the Chihuahuas games begin. We still don't know the entirety of the COVID protocols when it comes to team broadcasters and team media relations. It very well may be that I'm separate from the team, but certainly that doesn't affect the press box. We continue to plan, of course, to broadcast the games. But what I mean is, as far as, being on a team bus, travel to different cities, that type of thing. So I think like everybody, that's an ever-evolving document.
As much as I've enjoyed broadcasting from the West Star Bank Club over the last 6-7 years, however long it's been, I completely understand that might not be the case this year due to COVID. And I'll look forward, if it's not this year, it'll be 2022 to be back in those familiar confines, because it's so nice to be a part of that broadcast. But like you said, everything is completely different right now. And I think a lot of fans just are ready for baseball to come back at Southwest University Park so they can go and watch the Chihuahuas play. And today we found out that manager Edwin Rodriguez is going to return for his second season with the club.
Yeah, this was great news. Edwin is just such a likable, smart person. He's been around baseball 40 years, was a major league manager with the Marlins, loves El Paso, just raves about the facility, the community. He's from Puerto Rico, and he even found a Puerto Rican restaurant in El Paso that he always tells me about. So this was great news to have that familiarity. Edwin in 2019 led the team to an 80-60 season, which was the second best record the Chihuahuas have ever had. So he's right there among the most successful managers that we've ever had. The interesting thing is, in addition to Edwin, it's a completely new coaching staff.
That's right.
Eric Young is going to be the pitching coach, a former major league pitcher with the Phillies. Doug Banks, a newcomer to the Chihuahuas, is going to be the hitting coach. So we look forward to getting to know them. It might be via phone calls and text messages, at least to start. Won't have a chance to shake their hands, but we certainly welcome them to El Paso as well.
Eric Young has the greatest spelling of his last name. It is not Young. It is Junge, pronounced Young. He was actually in Padres camp in 06 trying to make the team.
Yeah, you're right. And from there, was hired as a scout for the Padres, then moved into uniform, was a pitching coordinator, was a roving pitching instructor. And interestingly, according to the Padres, he'll actually continue to have that job. So he will oversee the Chihuahuas pitchers, but also has a role overseeing all pitchers in the minor league system. So obviously somebody the Padres think very highly of, that he's doing double duty.
I wonder if there'll ever be like a backup pitching coach. So if he ever takes trips to go see the other teams, there'll be somebody else that could fill in for him.
I think you're right. In the past, Brunswell Patrick, the longtime pitching coach for the Chihuahuas, I remember he once had a child graduate from high school, and the Padres had somebody on call to hop in, fill in for a series when needed. So they definitely have the bodies to do that. And, it'll be such an interesting season. Last year, no minor league season at all. So the Padres were using the alternate site. Because of that, we really don't have a feel yet for the Chihuahuas roster the way we normally would on March 30th, because there's really no AA season to look back at last year and say, okay, who pitched well, who could be elevated to AAA. So we have some guesses, but it's a lot more unsure than normally at this time. But I do think the Padres continue to have a highly ranked farm system. I would expect it to be a strong team.
Tim Hagerty with us, voice of the Chihuahuas here on Sports Talk as we continue. So in addition to Eric Young, there is also Doug Banks. Now, Banks is an interesting name because I believe he goes back with A.J. Preller to their days together in the Rangers organization. And then when A.J. came over as GM, he brought a few of his guys with him from the Rangers organization, and Banks is one of them.
Yeah, he has an interesting background, not the typical hitting coach background that we've had in El Paso, in that he was in the front office with the Rangers. He wasn't in uniform, but with the Padres has evolved to be in the dugout, has been a hitting coach for a variety of Padres affiliates. This will be his first stop in AAA. And I know that hitting coaches here in El Paso especially have loved it because of the indoor batting cages. It's one of the features that the fans don't see in the ballpark, but state-of-the-art 2 full-size batting cages right next to the Chihuahuas clubhouse where hitters can get in work even during games.
That's huge, and you're right about that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Banks play his college ball at U of A?
He did, yeah, at the University of Arizona, a couple of years before they won that College World Series in 2012. So he's in his late 30s, and look forward to meeting him. And so often in El Paso, we've had some of the top hitting teams in the league. I'm really curious to what the lineup will look like. Of course, last time, 2019, the Chihuahuas set a league home run record. But there's also these articles that the Major League Baseball has been deadened a little bit. So I wonder if there'll be perhaps fewer home runs at Southwest University Park, but more balls spraying throughout the field elsewhere because of that change.
Tim Hagerty joining us here on Sports Talk, the radio voice of the Chihuahuas. Again, the story today that the manager and field staff has been named. And I was impressed to see that. I think it's their strength coach that's been with them since pretty much the beginning, like 10 years now with the same affiliation.
Yeah, that's AJ Russell, a very nice guy who I've known since 2011 with the Tucson Padres. He's somebody that has grown to love El Paso so much that he actually now has a wife and family and actually lives in El Paso year round, which isn't typical for that position. Usually that's somebody that will live in their hometown for the winter, but then travel somewhere for the season. But he's an El Pasoan now. So a very nice guy, probably a familiar face for fans that peek into the Chihuahuas dugout during games. He's been here since the beginning.
We're back right now with Tim Hagerty. He is the radio voice of the El Paso Chihuahuas here on Sports Talk as we continue. We're talking about the new field manager, who's really the old field manager. They announced it today that it's going to be Edwin Rodriguez returning with a new hitting coach, a new pitching coach, and some other new support staff that'll be with the team. Season starts early May. First home game, May 13th. You'll hear it all on 600 ESPN El Paso, your home for Chihuahuas baseball. So now the only question is going to be, Hags, who's on the team? I mean, we really don't know yet because the Padres haven't released a AAA roster, and they really don't need to for a while, considering all these guys could work out at their alternate site. And maybe as we get closer to May, we'll get word on that actual roster itself.
Yeah, you're right. So often the Chihuahuas are beginning just 1 week after the Padres do. This year, there's an entire month in between Padres opening day, which is Thursday, and the Chihuahuas, which is May 5th in Tacoma. So a lot can happen between now and then. But yeah, if we want to speculate, again, these are tentative names. I would expect a corner infielder to be Nick Tanalou, who played against the Chihuahuas with the Astros AAA team that was with Round Rock last year. Talented hitter, right-handed hitter, very strong. I'd expect him to be with the Chihuahuas, barring injuries in the major leagues. Of course, the Padres have such a talented infield. Guys like Hosmer and Machado playing the positions that Tanalou plays. So perhaps he could be like a Seth Mejias Breen type, dating back to the 2019 season, a minor league veteran ready in case there's an injury in the major leagues. Just to toss another name at you, Pedro Florimon, who has major league time with a couple of different teams. I would expect to be a middle infielder with El Paso. And then you look at the younger prospects. Mackenzie Gore, considered by some publications the best pitching prospect in all of baseball. Not expected to make the opening day roster with the Padres, so would not be surprised if he is pitching for the Chihuahuas in May, which would be exciting. And sorry to keep talking here, Steve. I know you're chomping at the bit with some of these names, so just hop in whenever you'd like. But
no, this is fascinating, Tim, and I'm just enjoying watching you speculate on the fly. This doesn't happen very often. I will say this, you can't use last year anymore because last year was a lost year. So it stinks because you're right. It was the last season they played, but it was 2019. So as far as I'm concerned, if you say last year, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about 19, not 20.
Exactly, yeah. And, normally if you and I spoke in late March, I would confidently be able to state these names. But right now, as we speak, I'm glancing at an email that I've written to myself because we're working on player bios. But there's a question mark next to a lot of these names. Webster Rivas, who was a Chihuahua in 2019, very good defensive catcher. Somebody that I hope at some point makes his major league debut. He certainly has the ability to do so. He just turned 30, so he'd be one of those great stories that bounces around the minor leagues a long time and then gets to the show. But I'd expect him to be with the Chihuahuas. And then as time moves on, looking at some of the other top prospects, CJ Abrams was drafted in 2019. He's only 20 years old, but has impressed so much. Not only last season at the alternate training site, but I'm hearing in spring training, he's stronger, he's faster, that maybe he's somebody in the summertime we see on his way to the major leagues as a young big leaguer. We've certainly seen that happen in the past. Some young Chihuahuas like Luis Urias that's come by at a younger age than a lot of AAA players and end up in the big leagues. Another interesting sort of, as you described with Edwin Rodriguez, the new manager is the old manager, Patrick Kivlahan, who was with the Chihuahuas in 2016, the championship season. He caught the final ball in the PCL championship clinching game in Oklahoma City, went around with a couple of teams in the majors. He got some good time with the Cincinnati Reds in the big leagues. The Padres signed him. He's coming back. I would expect him to be with El Paso. A couple of other outfielders, Jorge Oña, a terrific prospect who the Padres signed as an amateur in Cuba in 2016. Somebody that could be with the Chihuahuas this year. And also somebody that came over from the Tampa Bay Rays, Brian O'Grady, who plays outfield and first base. I have him down as a possible Chihuahua. So again, all of these are possible, but the interesting thing is it's going to be very new. This is not going to be a season where, okay, half the team, I remember them from last year. For the Chihuahuas loyals that really know the players, that come to a lot of games, that listen to a lot of games, opening night, there's going to be a lot of, who is this guy? There's not going to be a lot of familiar names because of that lost season. And in the AAA baseball world, when you talk about 16 to 20 months, that's an eternity for transactions. So many Chihuahuas are now playing elsewhere. So at the same time, that's exciting to welcome in a new batch of players that have never been to El Paso before.
Here's what's also fascinating, Hags, and that is, a couple of years ago, you could look at almost that entire team and say they all played for the Chihuahuas at one point. Now it's almost like nobody on this team has played for the Chihuahuas, that they're all guys that were acquired from other teams and other organizations or just skipped AAA altogether on the way up to the bigs. It's really interesting to look at the roster makeup and realize how little on that San Diego Padres opening day roster could have any experience in El Paso.
Yeah, I read recently that in recent seasons, the two general managers that have traded the most often with the other teams are Jerry Dipoto with Seattle and AJ Preller with San Diego. This is a general manager that is constantly making moves at the major league and the minor league level. So because of that, you're right. There aren't as many former Chihuahuas with the Padres. One of the best Padres, though, Dinelson Lamet, was one of the best Chihuahuas pitchers ever. So that's fun to watch when he'll get back out there after such a great season last year. But I also think that's exciting when you look at a random box score between, I don't know, the Indians and the White Sox, and you see a handful of former Chihuahuas with these other teams. Look at the Milwaukee Brewers, and you see Eric Yardley and Luis Urias, and Corey Spangenberg was there recently, among others. So it's like the Milwaukee Brewers, of all teams, will have a handful of former Chihuahuas, and two on their coaching staff as well, Pat Murphy and Jason Lane. So we're really building up enough history with the Chihuahuas now that there's so many former players scattered throughout the major leagues.
I'm excited about that too. Francia Cordero is another one, get a chance to play full time with the Red Sox, and everybody's been excited by his skill set for years. And it didn't work with the Chihuahuas or with the Padres because they were so built in the outfield already. But now a team like the Red Sox could be a perfect opportunity for a guy like Francia Cordero.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hunter Renfroe is there as well. And they also signed Michael Geddes to a minor league contract, who last year set a Chihuahuas single season home run record. So it could be this summer that you pull up a game at Fenway Park and there's three former Chihuahuas in the outfield.
It's pretty wild. All right. So I know you didn't get a chance to go out to spring training like you normally would because of COVID and the way things were this year. People don't realize this, but spring training was so limited. There were only between 1,600 and 2,000 fans allowed at every game this spring in the Cactus League.
Yeah. And even on the media side, there was no in-person interviews. So major league teams beat writers would go to the press box and be connected on Zoom to the manager and the player of the day. Even though they were a couple hundred yards apart, they were not doing in-person interviews. So because of that, yeah, unfortunately, we weren't able to do our annual Chihuahuas trip. It just didn't feel like that was a good use of expenses of time to be there when you really couldn't interact with anybody. So we do have plans to hopefully tape some interviews with the new coaches that were announced today. Hopefully share that on the Chihuahuas social media channels. And, just talking about that, it's just a reminder, I'm sure, like everybody listening in their respective lives, just can't wait until this COVID situation is in the rearview mirror and we can get back to, having jam-packed ballparks and in-person interviews, among other things.
We don't even know how many fans are going to be allowed in the ballpark yet because Major League Baseball has not given any direction yet to minor league clubs since they're now in charge, how many fans they want to be attending these games.
Yeah, I know the Chihuahuas management is in touch on a regular basis with the Padres, with Major League Baseball, with all of the involved entities. And stay tuned on that. I look forward to hearing that answer as well.
All right. Listen, it's been great having you on. I appreciate it. I was going to ask you about your picks for the NCAA basketball championship because I know you follow that so closely this time of year, right? You're really watching every minute of every game. But I figured I'll let you off the hook here today, Hags.
I've been listening on 600 ESPN El Paso, enjoying the broadcast, but I'm glad you didn't ask me.
That is such a good answer. That is the perfect company answer. So well rehearsed. I'm proud of you. Appreciate it. And Hags, next time we do it, let's do it face to face. All right?
Sounds good. Thank you.